books have so much vocabulary in them, and
Yeah.
research has shown that books have a huge variety of vocabulary in them that we would never use in our everyday speech. Um, so
Mm.
it's one of the best ways to add both those spoken language concepts and to get your um, reading and written language in at the same time. So you've
Yeah.
got your vocabulary concepts, grammar, that sentence structure,
Mm-hmm.
playing with kind of humor and how language kind of builds on humor,
Right.
social concepts, which are often based in language, right? So we all know
Right.
that we can put our foot in our mouth, and if we say just slightly the wrong thing, it can make a huge
Mm-hmm.
difference to someone who might take offense to a certain way of phrasing something. And then you
Mm-hmm.
can also bring in concepts in a really interesting way that are part of stories that might not be
Mm.
as interesting outside of a book. Um,
Yeah.
One thing that I try to remind parents of, we talked about listening is practice too, right? And so we want to
Mm-hmm.
remember that even when kids are able to read silently on their own or out loud on their own, it can be really important to continue to read out loud to them. And I think a
Ah,
lot of
yes. Mm-hmm.
teachers, school teachers, often kind of forget to encourage that. I think because they're so
Mm-hmm.
focused on those reading and writing skills for the kids, which is
Yeah.
also very important.
Mm-hmm.
But you're losing out on a lot of things when you're not reading out loud with your kids. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you're modeling the phrasing that we should use when we're reading. You're
Yes.
modeling different emotions and different voices.
Mm-hmm.
You can stop and talk with them about it, as you
Mm-hmm.
go. And you're also giving them that social, enjoyable experience of reading where they're not having to work so hard, right? Because
Yes.
my
Uh-huh.
my kiddos who have dyslexia or who have reading comprehension issues, they've learned over time that reading is hard, right? And this kind of goes back to
Mm-hmm.
creating this environment where we can bring some enjoyment in.
Yeah.
If I can sit and read with them and take some of that cognitive pressure off of them, they're not having to
Mm.
focus on sounding out all the letters and making sure that they remember what they just read because they worked so hard just to read it.
Right.
It's
Exactly.
just so much more fun, and they can feel that enjoyment of
Mm-hmm.
books without the stress. And so
Yeah.
I think it's one of the best things that you can do for kids. Um,
Yeah, and
and
well, a lot of curriculums. I mean, when I started homeschooling 19 years ago, read out
mhm,
louds were like, that's just the norm for a homeschool
mhm,
family. I think as we're moving more towards digital homeschool methods, those are getting pushed out from a lot of the newer
mhm,
types of curriculums. But those were some of the most enjoyable times I've had with
mhm,
my children.
yeah.
And the key I found was to do it during lunch,
Oh, that's a
because
good idea.
while my kids are eating,
Mhm,
they were a captive audience. You know,
mhm,
I ate after we we had lunch or
mhm,
they ate lunch, but it was a time when I could keep them in one spot and they would
yeah.
listen because they weren't all into listening to mom read. But over
Right.
time, you know, that it became
Yeah.
a habit and they did enjoy it. But if you're
Mhm.
just getting started with this new concept, that's something that helps.
That's a really good suggestion. Actually, I'm going to put that in my in my toolbox of suggestions for parents when I'm talking to them. I really like that. Um,
Mm,
Yeah, and it can give you that enjoyable experience, like you were saying, where you
mm-hmm.
start to enjoy reading with your kids again, where you may have become it's just so stressful for everybody that everyone's avoiding it, right? Not just the kids.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.